Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sub That Tutorials and More. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on any new videos, and check the video description for a link to the Sub That Learning Library app. Inside of our mobile/web app, you will access all of our free tutorials in our neatly organized content library, as well as be able to subscribe for access to exclusive content, communities, and more. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to laser engrave the new olive wood and resin cutting board from Johnson's Plastics Plus. Now, let me just tell you that this cutting board is absolutely stunning. And if you are a laser crafter who is looking for a product that has high profit and is gorgeous every single time, this is the item for you. I've been a longtime fan of wood and resin work. It's just never been something I've really wanted to dive into, mostly because of all the new tools I would have to buy. But this cutting board has all of the hard part done for you, and all you have to do is laser engrave it with your preferred design. So I've got a fun idea for this, but the first thing I want to do is, of course, show you the cutting board and give you a close-up look at it and get our measurements so we can size up our design. Let's go ahead and turn things around and get started. Here's a look at our olive wood and resin cutting board. I say that they're roughly a ½ inch thick, maybe a little bit more than that, might be a little bit more. And as you can see, you can get your pick of which one of the wood sections that you can choose to engrave. What I really like about these, not only that they're absolutely stunning, it's probably one of the most beautiful blanks that I've seen, is that there isn't too much resin. Sometimes when I see cutting boards like this, there's a lot of resin in them and a lot less wood, and the wood is what really makes them beautiful, and the resin should just be more of like an accent, in my opinion. So we do have a sizable amount of space where we can choose to add engraving. How much engraving you might add will kind of depend on what you want to advertise to your customers. So if your idea is that this is something that's more about a display, then maybe you're going to do a much larger engraving or engraving all over. But if you're looking for something that's actually functional that people are going to use, then you're probably going to look for something that's a bit more consolidated and or maybe just confined, like at the bottom or in one of the corners, or just like text that's right across the middle. It's important to remember that something like this is designed for hand wash only. It is designed to be used, but we also want to make sure that people realize that if there's too much stuff engraved, it's just going to be a place where like stuff that you're cutting can get caught in it. Now, I don't know about other people, but for me personally, something like this I'll absolutely use, and I'd love to have it on display, but I'm primarily going to put one of those like thin cutting mats over top of it when I do cut, so that I can really preserve this as long as I possibly can and just preserve the beauty of it all. So the first thing you're going to do is decide which one of these, I don't want to call them quadrants, but which one of these sections you're going to put your design on. Now we're doing a birth flower composition today with a quote. So I am thinking, the birth flower is going to be down kind of in one of the corners. The grain looks a little bit different on all of them, as you can see. I kind of like the idea of doing it here with the text here, since this kind of droops down a little bit and the text is just going to be like a little bit. I feel like that would be like a nice aesthetic look here, but there's also a lot more space here and I can make it bigger over there. So you can see you've got the options. I don't mind this bottom section also, but I like that on the other one, it kind of tapers down. I feel like since the text will take up less space in my design, that this would be better. That's just kind of my 2 cents in terms of this whole thing. So let's see. I think I'm going to want to do this side face up just because I personally don't love like the really dark lines. So I'm going to do this side face up, and we'll do it like this. And that way I can have my bouquet here and then my text here. And again, I've still got that kind of slooping down. This is just really an aesthetic preference. You might just not think about it at all, but I always like to think about how things lay out and what looks most aesthetically appealing. So Next, we want to get our measurements so that we can determine what size to make our design. I believe these cutting boards are about 15 inches wide, a little bit more than that, 15 3/4 inches wide. And basically I'm just looking to kind of figure out this space for that design, because that's going to be my peak, and we'll make sure that we've got the small one too, just if you're doing something that's bigger. So our smaller side is 4.5, and our larger section here is 5 1/8, it looks like. Yeah, 5 1/8. So I'm thinking that for my design, I'm probably going to go with about 4.5. I'm thinking, or maybe even 4. Yeah, I'm thinking like 4 inches by 4 inches right there would look really good. And then we'll have about 9 inches, 9.5 for our text. So we're going to set up our design in Affinity Designer. I'm going to show you how I'm going to lay it all out, and then we'll move it over into Beam Studio. So we're going to go ahead and set our cutting board in here, and I always like to kind of line it up with the honeycomb so that I can get it as straight as possible between these metal rods that are underneath the honeycomb and then the grids in the honeycomb itself. Just trying to get it as straight as possible. It makes it so much easier inside of the software to line up your design. Now, we're going to use our control panel to move our laser over and get everything auto-focused. We simply tap on our control panel using those control arrows and get it right over top of our product. Then we're going to bring down our little adjustment peg that is next to our laser. And then we simply tap the autofocus button, and the laser will do the rest. Once it is all set, you just pop that little leg back up, close the lid, and we're ready to begin.
Let's start off by opening up Affinity Studio. So we are using the new Affinity Studio. If you haven't seen this yet, this is the software that has recently been released, and it is supposed to be the software that's going to be moving forward with Affinity. There is some changes in the software in terms of like the layout itself, and you can check out our beginner series for some assistance there. When you open up your screen, you're going to have this pop-up for creating a new document, or you can always come to File and then New to create a new document. So we'll click on this little plus sign, and we are going to open up a document that's based on those measurements that we just got. Now this is just for the purpose of setting up our design and making sure we've kind of got it how we want. If you already have a design that you're using, you can import it right into Beam Studio and follow the steps that we'll do after we get done with Affinity. But for me today, I actually need to compile my design, and I want to show you how we're going to go about doing that. So I like to do everything for laser in millimeters. It just makes it easier when you're navigating Beam Studio or any laser software, because they are most often in millimeters, and a lot of the recommendations you're going to see are in millimeters. So we're going to create our page size to be that of our measurements, which was 15 3/4 inches wide, or 400.05 millimeters. And then our page height was 4.5 inches, was about that height of that space that we measured. So we're going to do 114.3 millimeters. Because this is laser, your color format and stuff doesn't matter, but we are going to keep the transparent background. And then under image placement, I like to have my images embedded. This is just a setting choice, but when your images are embedded, it means that they stay in the file. When they're linked, it's linked to wherever it's saved. So if you move that saved file, it is going to change it, or it's not going to show it in your document. You're going to have to relink it. So I always do embedded. I just prefer that option. All right, we don't need to have margins or anything else on, so we'll just go ahead and click Create Document. Now, I did mention I am using the new Affinity, and the studio layout does look a little bit different than a lot of us are used to. It is still somewhat similar to what we've done in the past, but I will be customizing my studio here in time, and it will look more like our old studio in a sense. in other videos. We're going to start by importing whatever kind of graphic that you're doing. Today I'm using a birth month flower compilation, and I have a whole video showing you how you can create one of these as well. We can select our Place tool, which is the little picture icon, or come to File and then Place. Now I'm going to go down into my downloads and grab that birth month flower bundle. Now I did export this as a PNG because we are engraving, so we don't need everything to be a curve. It can be a PNG for the purpose of engraving. When you have your downward arrow with the portal, you can either click and drag to size it, or you can one click to import it at full size. Since I did size this accordingly, we're going to do one size. I'm kind of going to move it in the place where I want it, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with that overall size for it. I could make it a little bit smaller, but I think I'm good with that. Now, for a project like this, you could just do the flower bundle. I think it'd be really great to do one if you have a lot of grandkids and kids. You could do like a field of flowers at the bottom of a cutting board like this, or if you want to do the whole cutting board, you could do it in the middle. All are great options for this particular aesthetic. The whole idea with this compilation is to create something that is personalized and commemorative in a way without it having to be a name or a monogram or something that is just getting a little bit overdone. We're looking at some of these alternative ideas for creating compilation or creating personalization in our products. Now I want to add a quote with this. I think that adding a quote or something like coordinates, or even the date you got married or anything like that, can be a really nice way to further enhance the personalization on a product like this, and just kind of make it extra special for the people who have it. So we're going to come to our text tool, and I am going to choose the artistic text tool that we normally use. Click and drag to start a font box, and I'm going to type in my quote, which is, "We were together, I forget the rest." Now this is a quote from Walt Whitman. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's perfect for this cutting board that I'm going to have on display in my kitchen. Largely, I'm not going to use this cutting board per se. I'll always have like a plastic cutting board on top of it if I'm going to actually need to cut something, but I want this to kind of be a statement piece in my kitchen. And these are, of course, usable cutting boards, but a lot of people do like the idea of having something like this as a statement piece that just always looks really beautiful on their countertops and brings the whole aesthetic together. So I want this to sort of have like an old-timey scripty font, like kind of the way people used to write when cursive was more common. So I'm going to use this font called Autography. I don't know why I stumbled with that. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I do want to add a stroke. So we're going to come to that stroke panel, and I'm just going to add a little bit of thickness to that so it isn't thin lines. I want it to look really nice. All right, we got our fill color with black, and then black for that. Perfect. Now, anytime I do a quote that's from literature, or a poem or from someone who has long left this planet, I do like to use their signatures if I can find it. So we're going to go ahead and select our place image tool again, because I do have Walt Whitman's signature. Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. Well, there we go. Walt Whitman's signature. When I used to do signs, when I painted signs, I would use signatures like this all the time when people did different types of literary quotes. So I've got a little cache of signatures like this. You can find SVG versions of these signatures. Usually on like Wikipedia is a good place to look for them, because they usually have them as part of like public access files. All right, so I'm going to click and drag so I can select both of those, and I'm going to center align them. We're going to find our alignment tool, which is the one that always looks like a bar graph, and I'm going to do centered within selection bounds and click apply. Now I think the spacing is good here. I I don't want to make this too small, but I also don't want it too big, but I am going to make it a little bit smaller. You could choose to kind of put it over on the side, but I like this idea of it being right below it. I think it works a little bit better with our flower composition. Now the question just is, how do I want to center this here? So I'm going to click and drag to select both of those, and then right click and choose group. And all right, this would be if it was centered across the whole space, but I actually think I like it to be down a little bit more. Not too far down, but definitely somewhat down. All right, so I kind of gave it a bit of spacing from the edge so that everything's not right up on top of the edge is basically what I was going for there. I like how this looks. Once you're content, you can go ahead and export this. I might actually want to move this up just a little bit. This is just personal preference, you know. Whatever is going to make you happy as the creator. Okay, so once we have everything ready, we can export this. Now, export looks a little bit different here in the new Affinity Studio. We're going to go to File and Export as one of our choices, and then choose Export, or you can come to this little Export tab, and it makes it quick and easy if you already have your settings, which in our case is our PNG. So I'm going to come down to my Downloads folder, and I'm just going to save this as my floral cutting board, quote, whatever you want to save it as. And it went ahead and saved that in our File Explorer. All right. If you want to save your file to work on it later, maybe you're not quite done, do be sure to go to File and then Save As. That is going to save your actual Affinity document. Remember, when you export, you are exporting some type of file type that is not an Affinity file. If you want to work on stuff, you need to do it with the Affinity file, which is where the Save As comes into play. Now, I don't need to save it, but I am just going to close that on down. So now let's go ahead and open up Beam Studio. Beam Studio is the software that comes with your BEAMBOX 2 laser engraver and cutter. It gives you all the capabilities of setting up your design and determining what kind of cutting or engraving settings are going to be used for the different layers of your design. We are engraving this today, so we just have our PNG layer, and I like to start by bringing in my design before I scan the bed of the laser for my product. You're going to click that little picture icon just like you do in Affinity to bring in your design, and you will select it from your File Explorer. Now, this should already be the correct size, but what I always like to do is create a boundary box that we will ultimately delete. It just gives us a way to line up our design with the edge of our substrate and make sure everything is as centered and straight and lined up as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and click that rectangle tool, and then just click and drag to start it. We're going to kind of eyeball it, and then we'll adjust it. Once you have that layer created, go ahead and click on your little control panel icon. You do need to make sure this is selected when you do this. And we're going to come over here to our height and width, and we're going to enter in those measurements that we used before, which was 400.05 millimeters wide by 114.3 millimeters high. And I'll lock that aspect ratio just in case we move anything. So as we can see, our PNG actually did import a little bit bigger, and that's okay. We could easily just adjust this if we select that layer and then come over here to that control panel again. It was still open, but if it's not, again, you're just going to click that little control panel icon. And if we adjust that width to 400.05, it should size right in there, and it did. So then we can line everything up. You can actually click and drag across these and come to the control panel again and just choose that middle align, horizontal and vertical axis, and now we are lined up just as we need to be. So again, this little outline is just going to be so we can line this up with our cutting board. Now, I do actually want to change the color of this layer, not laser, because the black is going to be a little hard to see. So we're going to do yellow. And all we had to do was click that little the little color square there and change it. Next, we're going to scan the bed of our laser by clicking on the camera icon in the top left. and it's going to home that laser back over to the starting point. And then with our camera plus icon, we just click and drag across the whole canvas space here for it to do the image scan and find the cutting board that we put in there. Now this does take just a minute for it to scan across all of the bed. If you're doing smaller substrates, you can scan less of the bed. It kind of just depends. This cutting board's taking up a lot of space, so we're going to do the whole bed so we don't miss it. All right, so it's almost complete, and then once it is, we will just line everything up. Today we are just doing an engraving on here as it is. We are not doing a color fill. I will do that on some different products. Color fill is when you choose to paint in the engraving after you've engraved it. There are a lot of different ways which you can do this. Some people like to put masking down first. Others use certain types of special engraving fill that can easily be wiped off after a minute or two that will just fill the engraving parts. So I've ordered some of that and I will be showing you how to use that. But for today, we're just doing the engraving on this. I think that it's going to look great, and I just kind of like the idea of not necessarily filling it in, but we can always do that later if we want to. So now that we have everything scanned in here, we're going to go ahead and select that swoop back arrow to come back into our main studio space. Click and drag our little group here, and let's line it up. So this is the area where we are putting this design. And I want to make sure that I've got this lined up with the edges. So I've got this nice and close on the bottom. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. And this is also why I recommend really trying to get things in there as straight as possible. Make it a little bigger for you guys, because it just makes everything about lining it up a little bit easier. So it looks like I am slightly off. Well, one, I can go over. I'm just using my arrow key to tap that over. I always like to double check two edges. Usually two gives me a clear picture of how straight I am. And this is also good because sometimes just the angle of the camera is not perfectly straight. So like when we're looking at this, we can see that this line perfectly straight lined up. This one almost straight. It seems a little bit off right here, but I believe it is still overall straight. I think it might just be the camera angle itself. When I'm looking at this, it looks like it's straight on the wood, and I'm kind of looking at how this text falls with the bottom of that, and I do think we're good. If you don't, you can always just rotate it just a little bit. We're rotating a little too far. And you can see how you like it there. Now that I did that rotation, I mean, it was only a fraction of a degree, but I do actually like that this is lined up a little bit better. I think either way, honestly, it was probably straight. The other thing I'm just going to check is my distance from the edges. I think this could go over to the left just a hair more. Okay, and then I think I'm going to bring it up just a little bit because I want to make sure that flower bouquet is not too far on the bottom. Okay, so I just did 2 taps up. So you can then release to kind of see how everything looks. If you're happy with it, then you're good to go. I am happy with that, so I'm going to select that boundary box. Always make sure you select those boundary boxes and delete them. They are just there for reference. Okay, now we need to set our settings. Now this is going to be a custom setting. I have not done anything with a bamboo cutting board yet, or an olive wood cutting board yet, so I haven't saved it. But I did just follow the recommendations from Johnson's Plastics Plus. They've already done the testing for this, so we didn't have to do any kind of materials test because they did provide it for different types of lasers, especially the FLUX laser. So I am going to select that little plus icon, and we're going to make, oh, we don't want these current ones. Whoops. We're going to click the settings icon, and then we're going to choose Add New. And this is going to be olive wood engraving. Okay, and then our power is going to be 30%. Our speed is going to be 250 millimeters per second. And our pass count is 1. So we can go ahead and choose save and exit for that. And then we'll come up here with our layer selected, and we're going to choose that from our parameters dropdown. And now we're ready to go. When we click on our play icon, it will calculate the movement of our tool path, and we can see how long this is going to take. It's going to take 13 minutes and 29 seconds. So we can go ahead and click start to send it off.
Once your engraving is finished, we want to go ahead and just give this a wipe down with some isopropyl alcohol. That is going to clean up any dust or anything like that that is within all of our crevices. And you'll notice that the design is going to pop more once you have cleaned up all of that little bit of debris and residue from the engraving. As I mentioned, this is the point at which if you wanted to do an infill, you would go ahead and apply that. There are a couple of different types of infill paint for laser engraving on wood. As I mentioned also, I did order one, and we'll do that on another project. I could always come back to it and do it on this one as well if I wanted to. But I honestly kind of just like this as it is. The infill is nice because, one, you could do different colors. Personally, I would just do black, but it just makes your design pop a little bit more. Now, the last thing you want to do with any quality wood cutting board is make sure to hit it with some food grade mineral oil. And that is going to just nourish the wood, seal everything up. Ooh. Apparently we need to actually take the seal off of it. And you can purchase this on Amazon. I have linked it in our Amazon storefront. You can also just pick it up at your local hardware store. I got mine at Lowe's since it is right up the corner. So you're just gonna put some on there, and we're gonna really generously apply it all over. And you really kind of just let it soak in a little bit. Now this kind of cutting board did already come with its own mineral seal. Typically they do, unless they're completely unfinished. But any real wood is gonna have this. And part of maintaining wood and wood and resin cutting boards in general is making sure that you do regularly apply a mineral oil like this, just to really nourish everything. So that can be part of your care instructions for your customers. All right, and so you will have a little bit of like the mineral oil residue that will all absorb in. Don't stress yourself about it. It usually absorbs in within a few hours. So there's the finished result of our olive wood and resin cutting board. As I said from the beginning, this product is so stunning. I am honestly really in love with it, and I can see so much potential for what you can do with designs. In terms of whether or not you should do the infill, that's really going to be up to your choice for your business. It doesn't really add a lot to the cost, but some people may prefer just to have that darker look. I do think that that look is really nice, and I think that when you have darker grains, it can really help bring things up to life more. So as I said, I could always choose to do that in the future if I wanted to, since I did make this for myself. But in terms of just generally what you offer your customers, you can choose to have it infilled or not. Totally your choice. In regards to use, I know that's a common question when it comes to items like this. This is a food safe product. You are able to use this for cutting anything. It is of course hand wash only, and making sure to regularly apply some cutting board oil to help just refresh it and keep that wood moisturized so that it doesn't end up splintering or anything like that. Normal steps that you would take with any type of wood cutting board. You can also simply have this on display. Me personally, I am going to have this on my countertop more for display and aesthetic. And when I want to cut something, I'll just put like a little plastic cutting mat on top of it so that I can preserve the beauty of this product. In terms of retail pricing for a product like this, you are looking at a sale price of $100 to $125 and a like regular retail non-sale price around $150. And this is the kind of item that you can offer free shipping within that, because it's going to cost you about $12 to ship it pretty much anywhere in the country. That would kind of be like the maximum you're going to pay to ship it, 12 to 15, I would say. So you can buffer that in with your pricing and just further improves the value of this item. Because of how gorgeous this is for an olive wood and resin combination, you don't necessarily need to do anything else to amplify the value of this. It stands on its own, but you can always choose to add other items like charcuterie tools or maybe towels if you so choose. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this tutorial. We'll see you next time.